Welcome back, everybody, to season 6, episode 24 of Dualistic Unity with Jackie and Amanda. We just had, I always think the conversations we have are like the best conversation that we've had, but this one I feel like we really broke some new ground and just came to the reminder, to the truth that there's no going anywhere. And all that this experience is about is experiencing it, tasting all the colors and flavors and textures of life, because they're all just as equally valuable and worthy of appreciation. All of it. And you're not doing anything wrong. You're just learning in the way that you're learning. And there's so much to be appreciated about all of that.
I completely agree. It is the best of the best that we've done. And even if we say that every time, I don't care because it feels like the best conversation when you're not trying to be anything in it. And so I'm so glad that you guys are going to see Jackie and I attempting to navigate the wild landscape that is our mind. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts on your attempts and your process of learning, because there is no wrong way to learn, but there is infinite directions that you can go while you learn. So set sail. We are setting out into the sea of potential, and I don't know where this journey is going to take us, but I'm glad that you're here. I'll see you guys soon.
Enjoy, everybody. All right, let's do this thing. Recording in progress.
Right, the recording is not going to curse. Not this version.
I'm fucking recording now.
That's right. Get fucking started. Oh my goodness.
Focus up, bitches.
Locked and loaded. Oh my God. No, but I I did like that we were chatting about just, how certain people who guide certain meditations, or the people that are portraying themselves or trying to be a teacher, when they don't take it so seriously and they can just show up as a normal person, who is going to stutter and is going to stumble on the words and is going to let a few curses slip through and say them on purpose, and just shows up fully. Because when someone is just putting on an act, I think it can be felt, and so that's why when people are trying to put themselves on a pedestal, but then trying to make it seem like they're humble, or it's like, no, we can all feel the performance, and it's not that you can't perform, it's just we don't have to treat it like it's not an act.
Yeah, it's absolutely not an act. And we all just fall into the habit of playing into those roles, I think. Like, I don't think that people who put on this like air of like serenity all the time just because they're like a yoga teacher or like a spiritual, I don't know, like any sort of thing like that. Um or if they're just guiding people in general, like there's this pressure to have this sense of confidence, or like you want your students to trust you, so you feel like you have to pretend like you have it all together. But it kind of creates this separation between you and them, right? Where you're taking on the role of, oh, well, I've already achieved the benefits of this thing. Like, let's say if you're a yoga teacher, it's like, okay, well, they must like understand more than I do about what this really is. And yeah, like certain people know certain things about these practices. I mean, that's not to completely be thrown out the window, but at the same time, you never are actually like a teacher, and the line between teacher and student is, it's not real. Because the teacher is only where they're at because they've been a student this whole time. And so I think it's nice when teachers let that show a little bit. To me, it's more inspiring because it's like, oh, yeah, you don't have to know everything or be perfect at something to share what you do know. And what you do know can help people. And just like sharing space with people is enough, I think. But it doesn't have to be serious. And I've loved the times when I've been able to have like real, just like a casual conversation with, like, for example, my teacher who I did my yoga teacher training with, like having real, like down to earth conversations and like sharing a laugh, like that was more impactful than any sort of like wisdom that she imposed on me because, like, it really was just the energy that she was embodying of just being herself.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, it's funny that we want or we expect people to want us to show up in a certain way, like in certain roles. Like, I mean, I do this. I project like an expectation on myself, but I don't think that expectation is really there. Most of the time, it's not. Like, most of the time, people just want you to be yourself. That is if like they're being their self, themselves.
Yeah. The words don't matter. I
You get it.
definitely picking up what you're putting down, and I agree. I
Exactly.
think the best teachers are the ones who don't think of themselves as a teacher. They think of themselves more often as another student who has just put in more reps, and it's very clear to see that the messaging we're getting constantly is that someone knows it all, but no one does. There's no way that any one person, no expert, I don't care if you spend 70 of your adult years studying and learning about one particular topic, there's no way that you would know that topic fully because every topic is interconnected with every other topic. There it's amazing how much there is an interconnection and interdependence between topics, between perspectives, and it just doesn't seem that any one topic is in a vacuum all by itself. And so even if you spent 100 years studying one particular thing, there's no way that you would know everything about that thing, and then everything else that influences it, everything that it influences, and then how that ripples back. There's just no way. So I'm fucking relieved that I don't have to pursue knowing everything anymore. Like that has lost its sparkle. It does not. It is not a juicy carrot to me anymore. It just feels like I'm chewing on rocks.
Oh, girl, that's relatable. Yeah, like, or even the idea of like reaching success, like in the same way you can't know everything about a single topic because they're all interconnected and interdependent on each other because like that's just the way this is all put together. But yeah, like if you're striving for any goal in your life, it's like, well, there could always be the next one. Like
Yep.
there's no end point. There's no end point. There's just more possibility. There's just all this possibility that you can explore, but there's no arriving at an end point or even a checkpoint.
Mhm.
And so on like on like a zoomed out perspective, it doesn't matter how much or how little you do in your life. I mean, you're always doing, even though you might not consider certain activities like sleeping or distracting yourself as like doing something, but you are doing something. And all of those things are interdependent on each other. And so it's not like any one person's role is more impactful than anyone else's. Like we all have the same capacity to make ripples, which I think is crazy when you think about it. It makes me want to start like I'm imagining just the status quo or like the collective consciousness, that collective Jung talked about all that, but like that's aside from the concept of the collective consciousness, whatever. I wish, like, I wish I could just pick it up and
Right.
give it a good shake.
Right, like those
Uh,
giant, you remember in like middle school, I don't know if you did this, where in gym class we'd all like get around like this giant rainbow, like
Parachute?
a parachute, and like everybody
Yes.
is like, oh my God, I love that. And then like you would do it like really fast, and then you blow it up, and then everybody would run to the center, and then it just like all like, and then we're all like trapped underneath it, and it was just like, ah, we're like pretending to be trapped. And oh my God, I'm right there with you. Like if only collective consciousness, but maybe to some degree, it is like this giant blanket that we're all interwoven in, and we are making these giant ripples. And when you are yourself, you are fucking throwing that blanket into into chaos, and it's just you're making a huge ripple just by being yourself, especially when you're surrounded by nothing but miserable actors.
Yep. Because the thing about people that are living for themselves is that it becomes glaringly obvious when other people aren't doing that. And when I'm like, I notice
Mhm.
so often throughout the day when I'm not being my quote unquote myself. Maybe because it's habitual for me to like try and be something in certain situations, so that still comes up, or like just trying to save face a lot. I realize in my life, like I won't say certain things because I'm afraid of how the other person is going to react, when in reality it's not a big deal. And like every time that I've told somebody something that I'm like nervous to tell them because I think they're going to judge me, I don't think anybody has really ever judged me. And even if they have, it's not about something serious. And people surprise me a lot with like how open-minded they actually are. But I think I have a habit of assuming that people are judgmental, or like, or like, yeah, judging me in the way that I judge myself.
Mhm.
And I notice that gets in the way of my social interaction a lot. And, becoming aware of it, it's getting better.
Mhm.
And I'm consciously, when I come up to a point in conversation where I'm like, okay, well, I could mention this or I could not, but like, fuck it. I'm gonna, like, let me just do it. I'm myself. They can react however the fuck they want. Most of the time, it goes well. So that's just been a lesson to me. Like, damn, maybe you should stop assuming people are judgmental assholes. Like, I saw this video that it was like judging or assuming that other people are judging you is judging them for being judgmental, or like judging them for your assumption that they're judgmental. But it's only because you're judgmental. You're the root of all of it. Like nobody is projecting that onto you really, or like even if they're trying to, if you see it for what it is and where it's really coming from, it doesn't affect you. So like what are you afraid of? You're only afraid of your own judgment.
Um,
Damn.
yeah,
Looking in the mirror for real.
it's always looking in the mirror. It's crazy how much your moment to moment is a reflection of what you are embodying, a reflection of what you're prioritizing. And it's ironically annoying because it's your greatest teacher. People think that, the best teachers are people, but I think the best teachers is experience. And I used to love this quote that was experience is the hardest teacher because it gives you the test first and the lesson after. But I don't actually think that experience is always testing us. I think that we judge our experience and we say that it's a test because we'd like to decide that we failed. But I don't think that experience is actually testing you. I think that experience is reflecting you. And sometimes we don't like those reflections. And so we think that, I need to go to someone because that someone who knows more than me is an expert, this authority. They're going to be the ones that can help me fix myself. And I think that a lot of teachers get caught up in being an authority figure and forgetting that they are just as much a student as the person that they are quote unquote sharing their their experience, their knowledge with. Um, and you know, I was watching. Have you seen the show? Damn it, what the hell is it called? It's on Netflix, and it was a animated cartoon. It might come back to me, but one of the voice actors for it was on a podcast, and I saw him, and he was he was talking about how your another great teacher is your addiction. Another great teacher is your overeating, your your addiction to the vape pen, your addiction to coffee, your addiction to the gym, right? Because that is directly showing you something that you're either holding on to, something that you're trying to compensate for, but that those are your greatest teachers, are your quote unquote bad habits. And I think that that is an excellent point, to look at your quote unquote bad habits not as something to be shameful of or to try to wave a magic wand and get rid of, but just something that is showing you a very big part of you, you know, something that you may not want to see. And so when I think about that, I was like, you know, I definitely had an over an addiction and a tendency to eat lots of sweets. And that was because those things made me feel better. And it made me feel better about all the pressure I put on myself, and how because I put so much pressure on myself, I wasn't eating a balanced diet. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't sleeping, but I was burning the candle at both ends. And I was working a full-time job, going to college, volunteering at multiple nonprofits, still trying to have a social life, still smoking, still eating junk food and devouring sweets all the time because they were quick and they were cheap, and it made me feel better. But you know, I used to think that like, oh, I just have a bad diet problem, and it's like, no, it's not that it's a problem, but that it is letting you know that you're really you're struggling, and you're trying to deny that struggle. You're trying to make yourself feel better with all these sweets, and you're not realizing what's driving you to those sweets. And that is a great lesson. And so now, you know, we don't have as much of an issue with sweets, and I've certainly changed the way that I eat sweets. So like right now we've got like an orange, you know, and so we're eating, something sweet and delicious, but it's a little more natural. But then I also have, some dark chocolate chips right next to me. All of these things are within reach, right? So I still eat sweet things, but not as often and not as much of a way to escape the pressure, because I'm just putting less pressure to begin with. So there's less of a sweet tooth that I'm having to manage.
Yeah, I resonate a lot with seeing your addictions or, your habits that you judge yourself for as teachers rather than problems. That really is a helpful way of looking at it because I've been looking at them as problems. And for me, it's like my relationship with weed has actually kind of been problematic at times. Not too bad, but to the point where I definitely realized like I'm doing this out of habit, or like it's been really bad like at like last year after my breakup. Oh my God. I was high for probably a month straight, and there's worse things I could do. Yeah, but at the same time, it's important to look at where that was coming from, and it was coming from me not wanting to feel my emotions or wanting to escape in some way to this place that is more calm and serene and you know zoomed out a little bit when it felt like when I was sober in my life. And yeah, like having a lot of shit going on and a lot of things up in the air, a lot of uncertainty, like that stirs up a lot of emotion and we have nowhere to put that. Like it's until you recognize that it's okay and it can like exist, you don't have to continue to run away from it and like push it away and judge yourself for it because that really is what keeps it around. I like how you said like like now you have a better relationship with sweets because you're able to address the root cause of that, and also like allow those feelings to be and know that you don't have to run away from them, because that's exactly how it's been for me as well. Like, you don't have to completely cut something off or like say it's bad and like never have sweets or never smoke a joint again. Like, it's okay to have things in moderation, but it's okay. It's important to recognize like where your motivation is coming from, and you're like, okay, well, I have other ways of dealing with my emotions. I know I'm capable of doing that on my own. I don't need to like reach for this other thing because I know in the end it's not actually going to fix it. It's not. It's just going to like suppress it for a little bit. But that pain is still there. Yeah, and I made a TikTok the other day, and in the caption I was writing about emotions, and yeah, like pain demands to be felt, right? Like, even if you try and run away, even if you push it down for years, it's still there, like literally in your body, like in your fascia, like in everything, like, and it'll come out in one way or another. Either like you're gonna face it and maybe you have to like grieve and cry and be depressed and like lean into that, but like sometimes that's required to be able to let something go. Like, you have to let it move through you. And I forget where I was going with that. Completely lost my train of thought. But yeah, pain demands to be felt. So it's I've been trying to figure out also like how to feel that, because I think for a lot of my life I've pushed my emotions down. Like, yeah, like I was never really taught how to like express my emotions like super vulnerably with the people around me, and that's not an excuse, right? But just explaining my background, and yeah, so I think I have a tendency to like suffer in silence and think I need to, have everything together and just take it all in stride. And so I've never really allowed myself to lean into my emotions fully. And maybe that's because they're intense and I feel things really deeply. And so that can be scary to face. But at the same time, I'm learning to appreciate that and give it space, because I think all the things I judge myself for, all the progress I haven't made, all the all the things I'm still holding on to, they're rooted in that. They're rooted in that pain that I'm not feeling. But yeah, I think facing that and like letting it express itself however it needs to, that's how the growth can start to happen. That's how like you can move on in your life, because you're not holding on to old pain like an old version of yourself. So yeah, that's like what I've been thinking about a lot the last like week or so.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with, suppressing feelings, but not all feelings. Certainly anger I leaned into because the messaging that I got from my environment was that anger was okay. Anger motivates. Anger was socially acceptable as an emotion to display publicly, and I don't mean like raging through a supermarket aisle, but I just mean, getting upset with someone was more was more embraced than crying in front of someone was. If I got pissed and I was like, what the fuck, people didn't really get too bothered by that, like it would just it was just anger was in the room, but if I were to cry, people don't know what to do with that, and so
I'm a crier.
oh yeah, I am definitely a crier. I think, and I love that you had said too that that you feel things deeply. And I would like to say the same. And I would also like to add that I think everyone is a deep feeler, but we just don't give ourselves the space to feel things deeply, because all feelings, you can feel them as deep as you want to go. I don't think there's any emotion or any feeling that is on the table that you couldn't feel incredibly deeply, that you couldn't get engulfed in, whether it was sadness, anger, joy, love, like all of the feelings. You could feel them as deep as you want to go. So I do think that we just are conditioned to suppress, unless it's a certain emotion that is aligned with like success or aligned with like masculinity. And I love when I hear men, for this particular example, I love when I hear men saying like, oh, women are so emotional. I was like, I have seen more men punch a hole through a wall than I have women cry. So I'm sorry, are you on your period, sir? Like they used to always ask me that. And I just love that when they'd be like, women are so emotional. I was like, men are so emotional without the skill set to manage their emotions. So I don't think that either gender is more emotional than the other, but I do think that one group has been conditioned to emotionally regulate, self-regulate, and one has been allowed to only express certain emotions, and then for that not to be considered an emotion, because last time I checked, anger is very much a feeling and very much an emotion, and men are constantly in my direct environment losing their fucking tops, punching through walls, getting upset because someone rejects their date, getting furious, having this road rage, which I know women have too, so just want to, disclaimer that as well. But it just feels like certain emotions are more allowed in society than others. And that's why we think that, that one is okay, but others like crying and being vulnerable are not, but they are all okay. And it's okay to feel all of them. I think it's just a slippery slope when you start to identify with it, or when you start to blame the way that you feel because of the actions of someone else, because you took it personally.
Yeah, I agree that you're right. Probably everybody has the same capacity to feel emotions as deeply as possible, men included. Like men, that part specifically where you were like, yeah, men feel things, just men are just as emotional as women, but women can actually handle that shit in a way that is like a little bit like, okay, there's still toxicity rampant with everybody, but yeah, it's more socially acceptable for women to express their emotions, mostly like to each other though, which is an interesting point. Because I think there's like a gap in how men and women can like communicate their emotions to each other based on like these gender roles that they're required to fill. So that's interesting as well. But yeah, everybody probably feels things to the same depth. It's just what you're willing to sit there and like feel. Because people run for their whole lives and like they can't escape the the pain that they feel, and it manifests in disease, it manifests in their relationships, with their family or otherwise, and yeah, also with their relationship with themselves and like what they allow themselves to experience. So like you could look at that and be like, it's sad, but everything is okay as it is already. But there's definitely more of a benefit than I think I have been willing to recognize for most of my life, to like just feel that shit. It's beautiful. I think it's because we think we can't handle it. It feels like too much. But like if you're not just this small little container, then like there's never too much to experience, right? Like it's your capacity to feel and experience is infinite. And even if it's limited, like let's say you have a short life, like in terms of, I'm thinking of it as like your width of life is like time, but like within there, like there could be infinite depth of experience. Like you could be feeling things, you could be so incredibly present and just like soaking it in and appreciating everything. And that doesn't mean always enjoying everything, but still like you can take in more. So it's just up to you how much of that you want to experience. And I don't know if it's possible to like completely just, you know, feel it all that's something I imagine that happens like when we die or something. Or like I feel like there's some sort of limit to our like physical meat suit ability to like feel being the universe, right? Everything is linked to our subjectivity, our like I know, I don't know. But there's definitely more in there than I've been willing to feel, but it's intense. And sometimes when I think about the fact that like everybody is feeling things so viscerally, I'm like, I just want to go out and like give everybody a hug. And I think that's our empathy, right? Because we understand that we're in this like weird experience, uncomfortable experience of being alive together. And so it's like we can cry together, we can celebrate together. And that's the most beautiful thing of all is that like this experience, even though we're alone in it and it seems painful and uncomfortable, like we don't have to feel alone. Yeah. And so it makes me sad that people feel that they can't express their emotions freely and that, I can't, but it's not something to be sad about. It's just something to normalize.
Hmm.
Like, I think the more people that are out there just being raw and authentic and like not being afraid to cry in public,
Hmm.
like that makes it easier for everybody else. So, yeah, it
Yeah.
just comes back to like the best thing you could do for the people around you is the best thing that you could do for yourself.
Hmm.
And that's just allow yourself to be whatever it is that you are in
Hmm.
any given moment, even when it's an emotional wreck who can't check off their to-do list or even get out of bed. Like, and so that's a different way to frame, feeling your emotions or going through like periods of depression. It's like you're doing the work.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Um, I really love what you said about how it is so beautiful to connect and to cry together and to be there with each other and to share emotions, but time and place, right? I don't need to handhold you through everything that you're feeling. And so the way that I kind of navigate this is like, if I'm with friends, if I'm in a public setting, and sometimes I've had heart to hearts with other girls in bathrooms and felt like their best friend and I'll never see them again. And I love the moments that we shared in that bathroom, right? And so you can absolutely have heart to hearts with people that quote unquote are strangers and with dear friends. But if I'm at work and a man or woman is being a little, is throwing a bit of of an adult temper tantrum, or they're being a little emotional, I say it exactly like that. I'm like, look, thank you so much for coming to this meeting, but I think that you're being a little too emotional. I'm going to need you to take 5 minutes to self regulate. Like at the end of the day, it's not my responsibility to walk you through your feelings because I don't ask you to do that for me. And so I will do that certain times. But if I'm in a very business professional like environment, I'm going to tell you, you're going to need to wrap this up. And I try to say it a little nicer than that, but it definitely has that same energy. That's like, I feel for you. I empathize with you, but that's not my problem. So you need to take 5 minutes, walk into that other room, wrap this shit up, and come back in here because we got things to do. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your mother. I'm not your girlfriend. And the same thing, I'm not your boyfriend. I'm not your husband. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your life coach. Like we can have heart to hearts, but it's not, because very often people feel like the minute that you give them that you step forward for them, some people take advantage of that. And then they don't want to stand on their own 2 feet. And so they'd like to lean on you over and over again. And that can become incredibly toxic. And so I like to nip that in the butt real quick. That's like, depending on certain circumstances, I do break that quote unquote rule for myself every once in a while, but I try not to break that rule in the beginning of a new relationship or friendship with someone, whether personal or professional, because constantly in my experience in a corporate work environment, I definitely had to handhold a lot of men and women. I had to handhold a lot of people who just were not able to self-regulate. And it's because, so many times you get that message that this is too much and that you can't handle it alone. And it's like, I don't think it's too much. I think there is so much on the table, but you never have to feel all of your feelings at once. And I love the quote that I had read somewhere that was, you can be anything, but not everything at once. And I know that they weren't talking about this in like the macro level where like, you are reality, you are everything at once. I get that. But when you're in the midst of your individual experience, that individual cannot be everything at once, but you could be anything and you could feel all those feelings. And luckily for us, we don't have to feel the depth of every feeling at the same time. So when you're feeling incredibly sad, you don't also have to be like, well, I should be really happy right now. Like or you shouldn't, like it, you don't have to feel everything at once. But I do think that people are a lot stronger than they imagine themselves to be. And you don't really get to see your strength until you're actually doing the rep yourself. Because I could tell you, you're amazing, you're strong, you're brilliant, you're wonderful. I could tell you, you can handle this, but you won't actually see that you can handle it until you're actually handling it. And so that, that's where I give what I was told was tough love, which is, to some degree and more or less words, get the fuck over it. I love you, but get the fuck over it. Like, so, you know, and I, and this is how I talk to myself. This is not just like, I only do this stuff. No, this is how I talk to myself. And, I love when, sometimes someone is like, you can open up, Amanda, you can lean on me. And I'm like, yeah, okay, a little bit. But then I'm like, all right, enough of that. Like, I got this. I can handle this, because there's no one that is better equipped to handle my emotions than me. And as much as I would love to have somebody there with me, I don't need them there. And I've only understood that because I have experienced it firsthand. And I experienced it in the rougher way where, people refused to help. People refused to be leaned on. And so I had to stand on my own 2 feet. But I'm so glad that I had that experience because it showed me how strong I am and how much I can take. And that's not even all that I could take. I just took a good chunk of shit and I turned it into something. And so that's why I'm like, oh no, I know that without a teacher, you can figure this out. Without somebody holding your hand, you can make it through. Without somebody to lean on, you can stand on your own. And there's that beautiful balance of when the conditions seem healthy and not codependent. Yes, let's cry together. Let's lean on each other. Let's ask each other for help. Let's do all that, but make sure, in my opinion, that you don't forget that you don't need other people to handhold you through your feelings. But it's nice to have people to share your experience with, and it's nice to have someone who would like to be there but doesn't think they need to be, and in the same way that you don't need them to be there. So when they are there, it just feels like an amazing bonus.
Yeah, that's a great distinction to make, Amanda, where like there's a balance to be had where you can be open and vulnerable and share things with people, but also knowing that they're not going to fix it for you. They can't. Nobody can, no matter what they tell you to make you feel better. You're still the one that has to face that shit, that problem. Like nobody else can do it for you. So, yeah, and I think when you recognize that, like the codependency is a little bit less likely because you're like, okay, well, I know that I can and will have to face the shit on my own anyway. So, yeah, it feels good to talk about it and share. And like, honestly, that helps me work through things on my own, but it's really me working through it. It's not the other person saying anything specific. It's like, you know, how they're reflecting me back at me maybe, and like maybe they say something and I completely disagree, but then it shows me what I think, you know? Um so that's the value of opening up and like sharing with people about your emotions. But you're right, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility and you can't pass the buck for any of it at all. As much as we love to play the victim, the damsel, it's like, oh my gosh, my life. Yeah, believing that your life is too much or like you're not capable of handling something is just avoidance. And it's funny, it's like you wouldn't be alive if you couldn't handle being alive. Like you've been doing it this whole time. And yet we discredit ourselves. I discredit myself so quickly, or like doubt my ability to be able to handle things or take on a new challenge or get through something emotionally difficult. I'm like, no, that would kill me. Like, no, it won't. So, yeah, but I think that like the idea about what going through something will be like is worse than the experience like of actually going through it, because like once you this fucking light keeps dying, bro. I swear. I charged it before this. Okay, we might have to get a new one. That's funny.
I thought the same thing. I was like, this fucking light.
Yeah, I forgot what I was saying, but Amanda, let's just carry it on somehow. We were talking about
Keep going. Just keep going, despite how you feel.
yeah. Sometimes on these calls, I'll be honest, I feel like an imposter. And that's something I think all of us experience in pretty much any role that we are in. And I had this thought earlier. It might be off topic of what we were talking about, but I'm like, I remember my whole life just being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always thought about, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be an astronaut. And there was a level of like value attached to it, or like, oh, I want to be a psychologist. Because I thought, if I become that, then I'll like feel like the idea that I have of that person as somebody that like has their shit together, like is respectable, is important. So yeah, it's funny when you grow up and realize that like the concept of whatever job or whatever role you're in isn't it. It's just the same thing that your life has always been, which is just you doing different things. I just think it's so crazy. Like it's so clear to me how the conceptual like ideas that we have around different things in our life, be it like career or relationships or like identity, limits us in so many ways from just like expressing ourselves fully and authentically. And there's like so many layers to the conditioning. But like what cuts through it all is just the recognition that you're just here now and you don't know anything with certainty. And your life is just like this. Like the conceptual stuff doesn't actually exist. Like we're all just trying to fill these roles that aren't anything. And that's why I think we're all left disillusioned at the end, because it's like, okay, well, this wasn't what I thought it would be. Of course, it's not what you think it was. Like, anywho, that's what I got.
I love it though, because I think it ties in very quite nicely
Mhm,
to us talking about at the beginning of this, teachers and roles. We
mhm.
think that the role of doctor is going to be somehow more certain. We think that the role of lawyer is going to be somehow more certain. I thought the same exact things. I wanted to be something that was prestigious, something that had a high social capital. I wanted something that was respected. I wanted something that looked very certain and made a lot of money, which to me equated to high value. And so I absolutely thought about being a psychologist. And then I thought, we're too rough. We're going to have patients jumping out the window. Maybe we shouldn't. you know that's literally why I'd like to I was like, I was so, because when I first encountered psychology and abnormal psychology and philosophy, I was fascinated and I was like, oh, this would be great. But I was really rough around the edges, and so I thought like I wanted to tell all my patients to just get the fuck over it. I was like, yeah, but that's a lot of out the window exits, possibly. So maybe we shouldn't maybe I'm not the right personality for sitting with somebody through their feelings. But I still had the capacity to learn how to empathize more. And so my fear of not being able to empathize was unfounded, and my desire to be a doctor was, I had a fascination with medicine and I thought it was so interesting and healing and the interconnected components of your biology and your chemistry and your environments. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is fascinating. And the lawyer I thought was great because, I was like, if we get into trouble, it'd be really great. It'd be a really good skill to know how to work the system to get out of those, to find those loopholes, to get out of trouble. So like all these are my thoughts around like all these prestigious careers, but they all centered around being in a position of authority be like a teacher, being in a position of authority and certainty, and thinking that that was going to solve this problem that I didn't realize I was creating. And it's so funny because, it felt like a hole in a bucket kind of mentality. And I instead of trying to fill the hole and seal it, I was just making more holes, and it kept getting harder to fill the bucket. And I'm like, shit, it's been me this whole time, And so but I appreciate all those hole punching, raged, panicked, sad, desperate, fearful moments and choices, because they all taught me so much. And, anytime that maybe somebody might see me in a teacher's role, I I have made a new effort to just tell them, I'm not a teacher, but you may be able to find a lesson in the way that I show up. You may be able to find a lesson in the way that I live. But it's not that I'm teaching you how to be the way that I'm showing up. It's not that I'm teaching you anything. It's that you're finding the value, you're finding the lesson. And so I think that we can learn from anyone. And this brings me back to like an old school, or not old school, but an older piece of advice that my mom gave me, which was just that, the CEO and the person that's homeless are the same, because you don't know if the person that was homeless was a doctor yesterday, was a CEO yesterday. You don't know how they got to being on the street, and you could learn just as much from the person on the street as the person in the corner office. And everybody has something that they can share with you, and you can learn from everyone. So in my mind, she put everybody on the same ground. And I'm the one who ended up building a hierarchy on that same level ground, and thinking that I wanted to get to this top spot because I thought that, my mom was just giving me like advice for like how to treat somebody. But I think now it's like how I can view everyone and how I can appreciate everyone, more than just not talking down to someone on the street and not looking up to the person in the corner office. I think she was telling me more than just how to talk to people. It was more than how to see people for more than just the sliver that you see at first.
Yeah, I love that. Everybody has their own unique set of experiences and things. And even teachers learn more about teaching and about the subject that they are teaching by teaching their students, and the way that their students reflect back, like whether they're understanding or not, or like questions they ask, or honestly any way that they interact with them. Like we're constantly learning from and about each other, no matter what the situation is. Like even if it's just two friends talking about nothing serious, they're learning from each other. And that's constant. Like we're all students of everything, and there's nobody who like is the ultimate authority on anything, because like we were saying before, there's no end to what you can learn. And I think that mentality, along with seeing things as play more than like work, and just seeing that you get to do things, not you have to do things, um, that makes life it seems a lot more worth living, right? Just doing things for the sake of doing them, living in reality rather than living for this conceptual idea of your life that isn't real and will never be real and will never like genuinely satisfy you. We're all chasing this conceptual idea of certainty, or having made it, or having value, rather than finding the own value within ourselves and in our lives by allowing ourselves to express authentically. Hmm. Yeah, well, that's interesting.
I like thinking
But
back to when we were kids and how, if we had met and we were both like in third grade, right? We're in elementary school together. When we meet, you appreciate the value that's already there, right? And I love that when we were younger and we had less standards and we had less expectations, your friends were just valuable for just existing the way that they were, for just being there themselves. Like you saw the value that was always there. And now we go through these like screening processes where it's like, oh, I've got to make sure that my friends are ambitious, that they are also successful, that that my partner meets this checklist. And it's like you go through all these screening processes, and then what's so ironic is that even when I did like screen a guy for dating, I wasn't actually sure if he liked me or if I just happened to pass his screening test, which was so funny, right? Like I got this person, checks all these boxes, but are they actually with me because they appreciate me or just because I check the boxes they want me to check? And so it just felt like so hollow, and I used to be super insecure about, relationships and friendships. And because I always thought that I had to prove that I was valuable, that I had to prove that I was enough, and that it wasn't necessarily that I was enough, but that I had very valuable skills, and that you would want to keep me around because of the skill set that I could offer, but not because you actually wanted me around, and that was something that I had to come to terms with, was just that I was making this impossible mission. And then, it didn't surprise me anymore why I always felt like a failure. It's because I had this impossible mission that it's impossible. So of course I can't finish it. And because I can't finish it, I'm kind of guaranteeing that I'm going to feel like this failure, that I'm going to feel like I'm not enough. But then, letting that go has been scary and frightening, because that made me feel better. And that was a bittersweet pill to realize, was that I gave myself this impossible mission to feel better, just to feel better. And it didn't actually make me feel better, but I wanted to tell myself that it made me feel better because it was something that was familiar. And because it was familiar, I thought that that meant that it was safe, and so uncertainty, because it's so unfamiliar, feels so unsafe. But it's not that uncertainty is unsafe, because I have been hurt more in the situations that I thought were familiar, that I chose, that people and situations made it through my screening list. And I have gotten more hurt in those situations than I have in the unpredictable, serendipitous, and not serendipitous, but the unpredictable, surprising moments. I have felt less suffering in those uncertain moments than I did in the moments that I felt the most certain. But that was for me to go through. And I appreciate that because I learned so much. And so that's why I was like, I don't know, like if we're in a purely academic sense, then of course there are teachers, but I don't actually think that there are any teachers. I think there's nothing, like you had said, there's nothing but students. And I think that everybody learns more in the classroom when everyone is just embracing the students that they will always be. Because I do think that I've seen more professors light up about a topic when the whole classroom was electric with curiosity and shooting out answers and questions, and they're like, I love my job, and it was because of the students that the topic felt invigorated with life and passion and enthusiasm, and it didn't come from the teacher, it came from the students, it came from being a curious student, and they got to experience that, with them. So I love what you had said, just that everyone is a student, and there's no authority, but you can certainly tell yourself that there is, but then that's just a bucket with a whole mindset. If you're looking to an authority, you're looking for someone to know it all, to give you that certainty, and no one will know it all. So you'll never find the teacher that you're looking for, but you can find the lessons that are already there.
And there's so much to appreciate in those lessons that you're teaching yourself by like doubting yourself or something. Yeah, like I love how you talked about how you recognize that setting this impossible standard for yourself was really just to keep you in this state of like confirming what you already thought about yourself, right? That you weren't good enough, that you couldn't, that you weren't doing enough, you weren't blank enough, right? I'm super guilty of this, like setting these impossibly high standards and then feeling bad about myself just because it makes me feel safe. Like it doesn't feel good, but it's familiar. It's what I've always done. And it keeps me from having to push out of my comfort zone if I just tell myself that I can't or like it's too much. So I like take myself out of the game before I have to play. But venture into that uncertainty knowing that yeah, you damn well could fail, but you don't know. Like you also don't know if you're going to. And it's egotistical as fuck and settling on a lot of certainty to believe that like you're a special kind of like disadvantaged or not good enough. Like stop thinking about yourself so fucking much. And so that's the lesson that you get over and over in life, like in so many different areas. Like it can come up in your career, but it could also come up in your relationships. And like you said, like this screening process of how we vet the people that we're going to have around us, that is a reflection of what we're already judging ourselves for, like directly. We're like, okay, well, these are the parts of myself that I'm pushing down and suppressing and pretending aren't there. So my partner can't show any of those things because I can't love myself for those things. So I can't love somebody else for those things. But I think the more of that you see in yourself, the the less you kind of hold on to those things and like the more okay you are with yourself, the more you can love other people fully because you're not seeing them as a concept, like when you're not seeing yourself as a concept. So, yeah, I just think it's beautiful. Like there's so much to appreciate and learn, but there's no getting anywhere. Like we're all just here to learn and experience until we like individually are not, but still like the process continues. You know, we're part of human evolution happening in real time, which I think is so cool. And even though there's no like end point where things are going to be certain or good, it's still enough. It's still enough, even in all of the uncertainty and the uncomfortable bits and the painful bits. Like it's all worthy of appreciation and like gratitude, honestly. Like, wow, like I'm so grateful that I can love this hard and feel this deeply and all of it. I'm so glad that I have shit to work through. Because, like, if I had it all figured out, that shit would be so boring. That's such a funny idea. Like, already knowing everything, knowing all the right things to do, it's like, okay, well, then let me just do all the things. Like, the fun part about life is that you're doing things and you don't really know how the outcome is going to be, and then you get to find out. So just go out there and fuck around and find out. Love that saying. Gonna get that shit like tatted on my forehead.
You know, the forehead's a bit extreme for me. You
Yeah,
know,
no,
at least
I'm
take
joking.
the
I'm joking.
forearm. The forearm is probably more so where I would go.
Like fuck around, find out or something.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Um, yeah, definitely. It's right, because you are the lesson, and a new lesson unfolds, as you do. The lessons change as you change. So if you feel like you're going through the same cycle, it's like there might be something that you're not paying attention to. There might be something that you do not want to pay attention to. It might be a combination of those factors, but it's definitely how I felt about my dating history, and how multiple relationships would have a similar challenges. And it was because I was screening and picking the same kind of person, because I didn't want to see that I was trying to make something work with someone that I thought that I was supposed to make it work with. Right. And I wasn't paying attention to how we just weren't resonating, and how that doesn't mean that anybody did anything wrong, but it's just that once I could see the lesson that was sitting there staring me right in the face, I was like, oh shit, damn it. But that's okay though, because then I could go to the root of it, and then it was less of thinking men are the problem, or I'm picking the wrong men, or I'm picking, men who don't have an emotional capacity. Anybody can learn anything. Anyone can learn to regulate their emotions. Anyone can learn to be space and feel all their emotions. I don't care what gender you are, how you identify. There, everybody has the capacity to learn as far as they want to go in any direction in any topic. Um, and when I stopped making men or the men that I dated the enemy, when I stopped making them the source of the conflict, I could see that they were just doing the same thing that I was doing, which was trying to protect myself, which was trying to have certainty, which was trying to have a life that I thought I was supposed to have, you know. And so there was so much more empathy, and I appreciate everything that happened in those past relationships, because once I was able to see the source of at least the conflict that I was feeling, it made a lot more sense, you know, that another person can't patch the hole in my bucket that I keep making bigger, but that somebody could appreciate my patchwork. You know, somebody could appreciate my process. Somebody could appreciate the self work that I was doing and the lessons that I was learning from my experiences with them and with myself. So I definitely have not resonated with the men that I used to resonate with. Um, and I still could have a beer with any one of those guys, the guys that I've dated and guys that happen to be in that same mindset today. I could still shoot the shit with them and have a beer with them because I'm not judging them in the way that I used to judge myself. And so it was so easy to judge them because I was already judging me for those same faults, for those same mistakes, or those same attempts. Because I don't really think it's a lot of mistakes. I think that people make attempts and we judge those attempts. And we think that because the attempt didn't land the way that we wanted it to, that made it a mistake. But I don't think that there are failures or mistakes. I think that those are just attempts. We're just attempting. And either we're attempting to feel better or we're attempting to make the most of what's here right now. And so, you know, keep going. And I love that, I don't know where I found it, but somebody had reworked the word fail so that it became an acronym, and that fail stood for frequent attempts in learning. And so I ask myself more often, have I failed today yet? Have I attempted something? Have I attempted to go in a direction and just blew up in my face? No. Well, why not? Go out there, shoot your shot, figure it out, fuck around and find out, because why not? I'd rather try and fall flat on my face than chain myself to the corner and wonder why it feels so hard to move.
Yeah. And that's something I'm guilty of even right now. And the message, like, I feel like the recognition I keep banging my fucking head against over and over in my life is like, you want to do shit, do it. Like, what the fuck are you waiting for? Like, all these things you want to do, guess what? No one's going to do them for you. Nobody's going to open that book and read it. Nobody's going to, go out there and start doing the thing you want to do. But I think I have a lot of limiting beliefs that I've created in my life, and just doubt and high ass expectations. And so now that I recognize that, I can't play the victim anymore. And so I feel like I'm going through this process of like letting go of my self-judgment that's been holding me back, because I'm the only one holding myself back. I know that I'm fully capable of doing anything because it's safer to doubt yourself. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to be cocky, or I don't want to be overconfident or delusional. But really, it's more delusional to think that I can't do things, you know? And it's like impacting my experience. And I feel like I'm like in a life where it feels like it's like I've grown out of it, or it's like I have a lot of like habits and behaviors that like, okay, I'm tired of this. But this is my comfort zone at the same time. But then your comfort zone becomes uncomfortable. And so it's never a comfort zone. You're like I love how we've had that conversation before. Like your comfort zone isn't ever actual real comfort or security. It's just a lie kind of that you're telling yourself. So So this is a great reminder for me. And, I'm already doing things that, are moving me forward. So it's not like I need to give myself the credit I'm due as well. That's another part of it is, acknowledging the growth that I've already made, then rather than being like, oh no, like I'm so afraid of growth. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, that's all keeping me there. And it's funny watching like my self-concept dissolve in front of my eyes. And then I'm like scrambling to be like, oh fuck, this feels weird. But it's all I feel really alive. I feel like I'm more aware of like the processing than I have ever been. And I feel like it's like speeding up because I'm giving myself more space to be just what I am rather than what I think I should be.
Yes, that was beautiful, Jackie. I am here with you. And yes, credit, definitely giving ourselves credit for the work that we're doing, for the attempts that we make, for the falling flat on your face and getting back up. Like you're giving, give yourself some credit for being here still, for showing up for you, for recognizing when you don't show up or when you put on the performance. Like all those things they all have their own lessons. They all have their own opportunities, and they all could have a limitation if you decided to stop, right? And I think that when we stop, that's the limitation. It's not that you couldn't keep going, is that you won't keep going. And that is the limitation that doesn't have to be there, but when it is there, it also is another opportunity. So it's like there is no time wasted. And I was thinking about that when I was doing something that I judged, and out of that thing that I was quote unquote wasting my time, I had this like brilliant idea come to me, and I was like, huh, so maybe that wasn't wasted time. And it was like it wasn't wasted time because I had an idea that I quote unquote judged as productive. It wasn't wasted time because that's just how I was spending my time. So it just feels like there is no such thing as wasted time, because the resting is just as important as the activity. The giving yourself credit is just as important and just as valuable as seeing when you are holding yourself back. Like nothing is more valuable than the other. Everything is valuable, everything is an opportunity, and everything is a lesson if you see it for that. But if you don't, then that is another opportunity that you can make something out of. So again, it's like, damn it, nothing is not productive. Shit, this whole time has been a lie that I've been telling myself that I'm this failure who's not doing anything. Like you have still been actively participating in your life, even when you felt like you weren't doing anything for yourself. So I am so glad that we get to remind ourselves, that we get to cry, laugh about it. We get to be like throwing little tantrums. We get to laugh at the tantrums. And then sometimes you get to tell yourself like, okay, enough of that. Get the fuck over it. I'm ready to live. I'm ready to live in a different direction now. Okay. It feels like we are this ship in this sea of potential. And sometimes we have the anchor down for reasons we think are justified and for no reason sometimes. And sometimes we're like, anchors up, we're setting sail. Ahoy, mateys. We're going into some unknown sea. I don't know what's going to happen, but if you guys are ready, I'm ready. You guys ready? Yeah, fuck yeah, let's do this.
I love that metaphor. It's like it's not that the ocean is keeping you in place. It's that you have the option to set your anchor or not. But it's interesting. I feel like on a societal level that we're encouraged to anchor ourselves down. Like anchor yourself, get married. Anchor yourself, have a career, right? And be this one thing. But I mean, you can, but then you'll just be sitting in that one spot. And like, yeah, if you're on the ocean, like in your experience in general, that could be nice. Like I don't think like a life where you're living by the societal blueprint automatically has to be depressing. Like there's a lot of value that you can find in any of those situations. So it's really just your choice and you're going to do both. So like It's not like one is going to be better than the other. Like you're still enjoying your time out on the water. So, and sometimes there'll be a storm, but that doesn't matter if you're like moving or not. Like you're still going to go through the storm. So I love that metaphor. But also just the reminder that everything is quote unquote productive because nothing is really productive. You're always just learning and experiencing at the same time. And that's just a great reminder. Everything can be so simple. We just make it complicated because we overthink it too much. And we need to think of ourselves and our journey as like important or like especially significant. And it is to us, yeah, I guess. But like we feel the need to try and make it a good life rather than just like being good with our life, which I think is what we really like want.
Oh, that is beautiful, Jackie. I agree. You know, you don't have to make a good life, but you can be good with the life that you are, that is right here, right now. And I think that is a perfect place for us to wrap up this amazing and inspiring and yet motivating and just bubble bursting conversation that it has been, because I feel like I've gotten so many reminders and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much, Jackie, for showing up for you and somehow being a bonus for me in my life. And I'm just so appreciative of our conversations.
Likewise, Amanda, you helped me so much by not even trying to. And I think that's just amazing and it's so cool that we get to talk as often as we do and like we could have never predicted the way that starting this podcast would go, but I've just been baffled by how like insightful and like I feel like we're breaking new territory in the way that I like think about and understand things. Like we're pushing forward and like challenging ourselves and it's just such a fun process and I couldn't ask for a better co-pilot. It's amazing. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and thank you all for listening as well. Like we would be doing this regardless probably, but it's cool to know that maybe some of our insights will ripple out and if not, at least we had fun doing it, right?
Mhm.
And do we have any announcements? We have Do You Real every Friday, live stream at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Except that's the exclusive Patreon episodes that the four of us, Andrew, Ray, Jackie, and I, will be recording and releasing, and some exclusive Patreon yoga classes that Jackie will be guiding us through. Thinking beginner and some advanced classes. We'll send out the details soon, but that is another amazing thing that you are doing, Jackie. Another great thing that you are actively participating in. And so another thing to give yourself credit for, because I'm so excited to see you just doing your thing. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching us make another attempt at something. Don't ask me to tell you more than that. It's just we made some attempts. You got to see us make those attempts. And I'm so glad that we get to share that with you. So we will chat with you again soon. And keep going and feel all the feelings, but just keep going, even if you feel like it's too much, because you can handle it. Of course you can.
Yep. Just do the next thing that makes sense. See you later, guys. Bye.